Elvis raised his hand for the spotlight. It hit his face, blinding him with sudden white intensity. Behind that wall of light, 12,000 people sat in total darkness. He couldn't see a single face, couldn't see hands, couldn't see the rows of seats he knew were there, just white in front of him, and absolute black everywhere else, like he'd been dropped into some kind of void where only he existed. The problem started exactly 30 seconds into Can't Help Falling in Love, which was supposed to be the gentle, intimate opening to the acoustic set. The kind of song where Elvis made direct eye contact with people in the front rows, where he could see tears streaming down faces in the third row, when he hit that line about "take my hand, take my whole life too," where the connection between performer and audience became something tangible, something you could almost touch, almost feel buzzing in the air between the stage and the seats. Except tonight, right now, he couldn't see anything. Just that wall of white light flooding his vision like staring directly into the sun, and beyond it, absolute black nothing. He kept singing through the first verse, his fingers moving automatically on the guitar strings, muscle memory taking over while his mind tried to process what was happening. He assumed the lighting tech would catch the mistake and fix it. Any second now, the spotlight would pull back slightly, would widen its focus, would illuminate at least the front few rows of the audience the way it was supposed to, according to every rehearsal, every run-through, every other show they'd done on this tour. Any second now, this would correct itself. The second verse started. The light didn't move, didn't adjust, didn't change at all. Elvis squinted past the glare, tried to make his eyes adjust, tried to see something, anything beyond the brilliant white wall. The audience was definitely out there. He could hear them, could hear that particular quality of concentrated silence that means people are listening with every fiber of their being, holding their breath, completely absorbed in the moment. But he couldn't see them. Not one face. Not one person. The spotlight was positioned wrong, angled wrong, and it was turning him into nothing more than a silhouette, a shadow puppet on a wall of light, while everyone who'd paid good money to see him perform sat invisible in the dark like ghosts at their own haunting. Look at this moment. Really look at it. This is where the story truly begins, not with the technical failure, that's just mechanics, just equipment doing the wrong thing, but with what happens when the single most important thing about live performance, the human connection, gets suddenly and completely severed. When 12,000 real people with real faces and real emotions become nothing more than ambient sound in the darkness. Backstage, in the cramped lighting booth perched high above the venue floor like a crow's nest on a ship, a 22-year-old kid named Marcus Webb was currently experiencing what he would later describe as the worst night of his entire life. This was his third show ever as a spotlight operator. His third show. Ever. The first two had been local garage bands at small clubs, where if you screwed up the lighting cues, maybe 50 people noticed, and most of them were too drunk to care anyway. This was Elvis Presley, at a mid-sized theater packed with 12,000 paying customers, and Marcus had just made a mistake that was getting exponentially worse with every passing second that he couldn't fix it. The cue sheet taped to the edge of his light board said, in Catherine's neat handwriting, "Acoustic set, key spot on Elvis, gentle wash on front sections, crowd should be visible to performer for eye contact." Marcus had nailed the first part. He'd locked the key spotlight on Elvis, absolutely perfectly, tracked him smoothly as he'd moved to center stage, kept the focus tight and clean. But the second part, the crucial part, the wash lights that were supposed to bathe the front sections of the audience in gentle, warm illumination, he'd completely botched it. Instead of bringing up channel 12, the front house partial wash, he'd hit channel 15, which was the kill switch for all auxiliary lighting. Every single light in the house except for the key spot had gone dark. Front of house, complete black. Side lighting that usually gave subtle depth to the space, gone. Even the tiny subtle floor lights that normally kept the aisles visible for safety reasons extinguished. Elvis Presley was standing in a single column of white light, like he was being interrogated under a naked bulb, and everything around him, the 12,000 people, the elaborate stage setup, the architectural details of the venue, had vanished into void black nothing. "Oh God," Marcus whispered, staring at his light board like it had personally betrayed him, like it had deliberately rearranged its switches just to mess with him. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely read the channel labels, the numbers swimming in his vision. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." His supervisor, a veteran lighting tech named Catherine Yang, who'd been doing this for 20 years and had probably forgotten more about stage lighting than Marcus would ever learn, had stepped out to grab coffee exactly 4 minutes ago. She'd said, "You got this, kid. Acoustic set's easy. Just follow the cue sheet and you'll be fine." Famous last words. She'd be back in another minute or two. But 1 minute in live performance, when something's going catastrophically wrong, feels like an hour, feels like a lifetime. Marcus's fingers hovered over the board. He knew he'd hit the wrong switch. But which one? There were 48 different lighting channels on this board, and in his panic, they all looked identical. If he started hitting switches randomly, trying to fix it, he might make it worse, might blind the audience, might drop them all into complete darkness, might... Wait. Notice what's happening here. We've got two people in crisis, Elvis on stage, trying to perform for an audience he can't see, Marcus in the booth, paralyzed by fear and inexperience, and neither of them knows what the other is going through. This is where the first loop opens. Can Elvis connect with an audience he can't see? Can he give them what they came for when the most basic tool of his trade, eye contact, has been taken away? Elvis finished Can't Help Falling in Love and transitioned smoothly into Love Me Tender, his fingers finding the chord changes without conscious thought, after playing these songs thousands of times. But everything felt wrong, off, disconnected. He still couldn't see anyone past that wall of blinding light. The spotlight had become a prison now, a cylinder of brilliant white that surrounded him completely and cut him off from everything and everyone beyond its edge. He was performing for shadows, for echoes bouncing off walls he couldn't see, for the abstract idea of an audience rather than actual flesh and blood human beings with faces and expressions and emotions. He tried moving around the stage during the second verse, thinking maybe if he stepped out of the light's direct center, if he moved toward the edges, the spot would widen its focus, or the operator would realize something was wrong and adjust. It didn't work. The spot followed him with perfect, almost mocking precision. Marcus might have utterly destroyed the crowd lighting, but his tracking technique was flawless. Every step Elvis took, the light moved with him smoothly, keeping him perfectly centered in that brilliant white column, keeping him isolated, keeping him blind to the very people he was trying to reach. It was like performing in a sensory deprivation tank. He could hear the audience, their breathing, their occasional shifts in seats, the quality of their attention, but he couldn't see them, couldn't read their faces, couldn't tell if that line he'd just sung had landed the way it was supposed to, if the emotion he was trying to convey was actually getting through. Performance for Elvis had always been a conversation, a back-and-forth exchange of energy between him and whoever was watching. But you can't have a conversation with darkness. You can't exchange energy with people you can't see. The second loop opens right here, right at this moment. The technical challenge. How do you fix a problem that you can't communicate? When you're trapped on stage under lights and the person who needs to fix those lights is somewhere in a booth you can't reach, can't see, can't signal to. There's no headset connecting them. No intercom. No way to say, "Hey, I can't see the audience, can you fix this?" Elvis was utterly alone in his spotlight prison, and Marcus was utterly alone in his booth panic, and neither of them had any way to help the other. Elvis could have stopped the song, could have addressed the audience. "Folks, we've got a lighting issue. Give us a second." That would have been professional. Safe, but it would also break the spell. Remind everyone this was a show, not magic. Turn performance into technical rehearsal. So he kept singing, kept moving through the acoustic set, like nothing was wrong. Are you lonesome tonight? It's now or never. If I can dream, song after song, singing to darkness, trusting that somewhere out there, people were listening, feeling, present, even though he couldn't see them. But it was wrong. The whole point of the acoustic set was intimacy, making 12,000 people feel like the only person in the room. You can't do that when you're blind, when you're just a voice disconnected from the very people you're trying to reach. Marcus was on the edge of complete panic, his hands cramping from gripping the board, sweat running down his back. Catherine still wasn't back. 3 minutes felt like 3 hours, and he couldn't find the switch, couldn't figure out what he'd done wrong. "Come on," he muttered, scanning the board. "Channel 23, wrong. Channel 31, wrong. Channel 8, wrong again. Wait. Channel 12. House partial-less front sections. That had to be it." His finger moved toward the fader, hesitated, What if he was wrong? What if he made it worse? But Elvis was still singing, still performing, still giving 12,000 people a show, despite Marcus destroying his sightlines. The least he could do was try to fix it. He took a breath, said a prayer, pushed the fader. Nothing. Wrong channel. Notice the countdown. Every second passing is another second of broken connection. Another moment Elvis performs blind. He finished Bridge Over Troubled Water and paused to adjust his guitar. Tried one more time to see past the spotlight into the audience. Still nothing, just that wall of white light and the void beyond it. "Folks, I hope you're enjoying the show," he said into the microphone, and his voice sounded strange in his own ears, detached. He couldn't see if anyone was nodding, couldn't see if they were smiling or confused or bored, couldn't read the room at all. "We've got a couple more songs here, then we'll kick it back up with the full band." Silence from the darkness. Then applause, scattered at first, then building. At least they were still out there, still listening. That was something. But it wasn't enough. Elvis Presley didn't do enough. He did connection, he did magic. He did moments that people would remember for the rest of their lives. And you can't make those moments when you're singing to ghosts. Marcus tried Channel 18. Wrong. Channel 22. Wrong. Channel 29. Also wrong. Every switch he hit either did nothing or turned on something completely unrelated to what he needed. The back wall wash. The stage floor lights. The goddamn emergency exit signs. "Where are you?" he whispered at the board, like it would answer him. "Where's the front house wash?" Catherine walked back into the booth with her coffee, and immediately knew something was catastrophically wrong. "What did you do?" The crowd lights. I can't. I hit the wrong." She looked at the stage, at Elvis standing in his spotlight prison, then at the board, and her face went pale. "I'm trying to fix it. I've tried every." "Stop." She set her coffee down, moved to the board with the kind of calm that comes from 2 decades of emergency fixes. "Just stop touching things before you make it worse." Her hands moved across the faders with absolute certainty. Channel 12. That was the one. The front house partial that Marcus had killed 7 minutes ago when he'd hit the wrong switch during the transition. And suddenly, like a curtain being pulled back, like stepping from a dark room into sunlight, like the world coming back into focus after being blurred for too long, Elvis could see again. The difference was immediate and absolutely overwhelming. It wasn't gradual. It wasn't subtle. 1 second he was singing to void black nothing, and the next second the front sections of the audience materialized out of darkness like magic, like they'd been conjured into existence by the rising washlights. He could see the woman in the 3rd row, the one who'd been there the whole time invisible in the dark, tears streaming down her face as she listened to It's Now or Never. Could see the elderly couple in the very front holding hands, the old man's thumb rubbing gentle circles on his wife's knuckles. Could see the teenage girl standing on her seat trying to get a better view over the person in front of her. Could see a young man in the 5th row mouthing every single word to the song. Could see 12,000 faces, all different, all present, all here, all real. His chest tightened with something that felt like relief and gratitude mixed together so strongly, it almost hurt. He wanted to stop singing. Wanted to just take a moment to look at all these people who'd been patiently sitting in darkness waiting for him to see them again. Almost laughed with the sheer overwhelming emotion of it. Almost. But he managed to keep it professional, keep his voice steady, keep singing like nothing extraordinary had just happened, even though everything felt different now. The connection he'd been searching for blindly in the dark for the last 7 minutes, feeling for it like someone trying to find a light switch in an unfamiliar room, suddenly snapped back into place with an almost audible click, like a circuit completing, like electricity flowing again after a power outage. The performance transformed instantly. The tension that had been slowly building in his shoulders for 7 straight minutes released all at once. His voice opened up, became warmer, became more present. The invisible wall between him and the audience dissolved. The 3rd loop opens now. The emotional challenge. Can he recover from those 7 minutes of disconnection? Can he make up for lost time? Can he turn a technical failure into something meaningful? Elvis finished American Trilogy and looked directly at the elderly couple in the front row, made eye contact with the woman, saw her eyes widen with recognition. He sees me. He's really looking at me. That moment right there. That's what people pay for. That's what makes the difference between a concert and an experience. "You know something," Elvis said into the mic, speaking directly to the couple, but loud enough for everyone to hear. For a few minutes there, I was singing to the darkness. Couldn't see any of you beautiful people. Thought maybe I'd been left alone on this stage. Just me and my guitar, and a whole lot of empty seats. Laughter from the crowd. Sympathetic laughter. They'd felt it too, that weird disconnect when the lights had been wrong. But you were here the whole time, weren't you? Even when I couldn't see you, still listening, still present. That's what makes this work. That's what makes any of this mean something. You showing up, being here, being real. The applause was thunderous. Not because he'd said anything particularly profound, but because he'd acknowledged the weird moment they'd all just shared. The technical glitch that could have been embarrassing had become a moment of connection instead. Marcus watched from the booth, his hands still shaking but his breathing starting to slow. Catherine had her hand on his shoulder. "You're going to be okay," she said. "Everyone screws up. You just had the bad luck to do it in front of 12,000 people, and Elvis Presley." "I almost ruined his show," Marcus said, and his voice cracked. "But you didn't. And more importantly, you tried to fix it. You didn't freeze up completely. You stayed at the board, kept trying different channels. That matters. He couldn't see the audience for 7 whole minutes because of me. And now he can. And he turned it into a moment. That's what great performers do. They take the accidents and make them part of the show." She squeezed his shoulder. "Watch. Learn. This is going to be a story you tell for the rest of your career. The first loop closes here. Can Elvis connect with an audience he can't see?" The answer turned out to be yes, but not the way anyone expected. The 7 minutes of blindness had created a tension that made the moment when the lights came back up even more powerful. The disconnect had made the reconnection sweeter. Elvis moved into Suspicious Minds, and the full band kicked in, and the energy in the room went from intimate to electric. But something had changed. The audience was more present now, more engaged, because they'd all been through something together. That weird technical glitch that could have been forgotten had become a shared experience. The second loop closes too. The technical challenge, how do you fix a problem when you can't communicate, had been solved by Marcus's persistence and Catherine's expertise. Not elegantly, not quickly, but solved nonetheless. And the third loop, the emotional one, can Elvis recover, closed with a definitive yes. He'd not only recovered, he'd turned the failure into connection, had acknowledged the weirdness, had shared it with the audience, had made them partners in the moment rather than victims of a technical screw-up. After the show ended, after the final encore and the standing ovation and the slow emptying of the venue as 12,000 people filed out into the night, still buzzing with the energy of what they'd just experienced, Elvis did something unexpected. He asked to meet the lighting crew, all of them, not just Catherine, the supervisor, but everyone who'd been working in the booth that night. Catherine brought Marcus along reluctantly, the kid still pale and shaky, still expecting to get fired or worse, still barely able to meet anyone's eyes after what he'd done. Elvis was in his dressing room, already changed out of his jumpsuit into casual clothes, a towel around his neck, catching his breath. He looked at Marcus when Catherine brought him in, looked at this 22-year-old kid who'd nearly ruined his entire acoustic set, who'd taken away his ability to see the audience for 7 of the longest minutes of the show, and his expression softened immediately. "You're the new guy?" Elvis asked, and his voice was gentle, not angry, not accusatory. Marcus nodded, couldn't quite bring himself to meet Elvis's eyes directly, stared instead at a spot on the floor near Elvis's left shoe. "Yes, sir." "How new?" "First show. 3rd show ever," Marcus admitted, and his voice came out smaller than he meant it to. "First 2 were, significantly smaller venues. Local bands. Nothing like this. Nothing like." He gestured vaguely, indicating the theater, the crowd, Elvis himself, everything. "Let me tell you something," Elvis said, and he waited until Marcus looked up, until their eyes actually met. "Everyone screws up. Every single person who's ever performed on a stage, every person who's ever worked behind the scenes, every person who's ever done anything worth doing at all, they've all had a night where it went sideways, where they made a mistake, where things didn't go according to plan." "I made you sing to the dark for 7 minutes, Marcus said miserably, the words rushing out like confession. 7 whole minutes, you couldn't see anyone. Because of me, because I hit the wrong switch, and then panicked, and couldn't find the right one to fix it. You did. Elvis agreed. Not sugarcoating it. Not pretending it hadn't been a problem. And you know what I learned in those 7 minutes? What I actually learned, standing up there blind. He paused, made sure Marcus was really listening, and not just waiting for the hammer to fall. I learned that I can still connect with people even when I can't see their faces. That the connection isn't just about eye contact or visual feedback. That it's deeper than that. It's about trust. It's about showing up and doing the work even when conditions aren't perfect. You gave me a gift tonight, Marcus. Even though you didn't mean to. Even though you were probably panicking up in that booth thinking you'd ruined everything. A gift? Yeah. You reminded me what this is really about. Not the lights or the staging or the perfect sight lines. It's about the music. It's about showing up and singing even when conditions aren't perfect. Even when you can't see the people you're singing for. Trust that they're there. Trust that it matters. Marcus didn't know what to say. Stood there feeling like he'd been expecting to get executed, and instead received a pardon and a lesson. Next time, Elvis continued, you'll know which switch is which. You'll have that experience, that muscle memory. You'll be better because of tonight. That's how we learn. We mess up in front of 12,000 people, and then we make sure it doesn't happen again. Catherine spoke up. He kept trying to fix it, didn't freeze, stayed at the board. Then he's got what matters. The rest is just practice. Elvis extended his hand to Marcus. Thank you for tonight. Seriously, even the parts that didn't go according to plan. Marcus shook his hand, still not quite believing this was happening. I'm so sorry. Don't be better next time. That's all any of us can do. The takeaway. Perfection isn't the goal. Connection is, and sometimes connection happens, despite imperfection, or even because of it. Elvis could have stopped the show when the lights went wrong, could have complained, could have made a big production about the technical failure that left him singing to absolute darkness for 7 interminable minutes. Instead, he did something more difficult. He kept going, kept trusting that the audience was there, even when he literally couldn't see a single face, kept faith with the invisible people in the dark. And when the lights finally came up and he could see again, he didn't pretend nothing had happened. He acknowledged the weirdness, shared it with the audience, made them partners in the moment, rather than victims of a technical glitch. Sometimes the technical failures become the most important parts of the show. They strip away the polish and the production value and the carefully rehearsed perfection, and they remind everyone, performer and audience alike, what's really essential, what actually matters. Marcus learned that every single switch on a light board has consequences, that even small mistakes can have big impacts, that you need to know your equipment cold before you're responsible for 12,000 people's experience. Elvis learned something too, that he could maintain connection with an audience even in complete darkness, that the bond between performer and listener runs deeper than visual feedback, that trust and presence matter more than perfect sightlines. The 12,000 people in that theater that night learned that live performance is inherently messy and imperfect and unpredictable, and that's exactly what makes it valuable. That's what makes it different from listening to a record or watching a filmed concert. The possibility of failure, the ever-present risk that something will go wrong, is what makes the moments when everything goes right feel magical. If it was always perfect, it would stop being special. The rookie lighting tech didn't get fired that night. He went on to become one of the most reliable, most sought-after operators in the entire business, someone other technicians specifically requested when booking tours. And he never ever hit the wrong switch again. Not once in 40 years of touring with everyone from rock bands to symphony orchestras to Broadway shows. Because sometimes you only need to learn a lesson once, especially when you learn it in front of 12,000 people and one of the most famous performers in the world. The show went on. The lights came up, and everyone left with a story. Not about perfection, but about grace under pressure. That's the moment that mattered.